Any business, whether selling products or services, must obtain materials to create what it sells. It must also have a way of providing those services or putting goods in the hands of its customers. A supply chain is a system of organizations, people, technology, activities, information, and resources involved in moving a product or service from supplier to customer. Supply chain activities transform natural resources, raw materials, and components into a finished product that is delivered to the end customer. While it may appear independent, a supply chain is actually a complex illustration of how supply and demand interact. The slide you see illustrates a simplified supply chain for laptop computers. There are many different pieces needed to assemble a computer, and each piece is made of different materials, each with a variety of suppliers. Once the computer is assembled, it enters a network of businesses that sell the finished product, through which the customer finally buys it. The boxes highlighted represent only one supply chain in that process. The phrase supply chain management refers to how you try to use the supply chain concept to increase efficiency by integrating key business processes, from original suppliers through end users. In a supply chain, the original suppliers are those that provide products, services, and information that add value for customers and others involved in the process. The end users are the customers actually buying the finished product or service. As an example, a business that sells tea in a shop is part of a supply chain that includes farmers and harvesters, those who dry the leaves, the manufacturers of packaging for the dried tea, sellers in wholesale markets, those who transport the tea between all of the production steps, the business owner, and his customers. Each of those parties also has suppliers and customers for intersecting supply chains. For example, the farmer works with a seed supplier, and the transport company works with truck and fuel suppliers as well as other farmers. All of the parties in a supply chain are interested in the supply and demand information of the others in the chain and can use that information to make their operations more efficient. In our example of selling tea, the business that dries the tea leaves is interested in information from harvesters about the size of the tea crop and what types of leaves are available so that they can hire the correct number of people for processing. The businesses that sell in wholesale markets are interested to know about sales at tea shops so that they can bring enough to markets for sale to shop owners. The primary objective of supply chain management is to fulfill customer demands through the most efficient use of resources, including distribution, inventory, and labor. That means that each business involved would be able to buy only what it is certain to sell, that suppliers would only make what their customers need, and that manufacturers only need to hire the number of people needed to produce those amounts. It would also mean that customers could always find what they are looking for, because an efficient supply chain would always produce the amount to meet demand. If all relevant information is accessible to all the people involved, every company in the supply chain would have the ability to help optimize the entire supply chain. An example is with respect to inventory. The risk of having too much inventory in one place is that it may spoil and not be sellable. If all parties know how much they need to have available, they can ensure that inventory is properly stored if it is not needed for sale at that time, or it would not even be produced if there is not enough demand for it. Similarly, when information is communicated that demand is increasing, each party needs to know so that workers can be hired and vehicles can be available to transport products. This will lead to better planned production and distribution, which can cut costs and result in a final product that customers want, leading to better sales and better overall results for the companies involved. If information is being communicated properly, no business along the chain would be left with goods that it cannot sell. In general, the solution for supply chains is to create a flow of inventory so as to ensure greater availability and to eliminate surpluses. One way for this to happen more easily is to combine efforts. As mentioned earlier, there are multiple supply chains operating at the same time, especially when one business has multiple customers. If some of those customers work together, sometimes called a cooperative organization, they can make it easier for the supplier to project its demand. making his operation more efficient. At the same time, they can also negotiate a better price by combining their purchase orders. Likewise, rather than each using different transportation to get the product from one place to another, these cooperative business associations can negotiate lower transportation costs by giving a larger amount of combined business to one company. These cooperative arrangements not only make the businesses more efficient, but those efficiencies can also lead to higher profits. The cooperative concept is not limited to businesses selling products. As an example, some hotels that are separately owned have a cooperative agreement where they have a common brand name and share the marketing costs to build brand awareness. Since a large-scale marketing campaign can cover a lot of areas, the hotels in each of those areas benefits, and the cost for each business is lower than it would be for separate campaigns. Supply chain management can provide other benefits besides inventory management. For example, if your business is to provide food to grocery stores, you can make your business more efficient by placing your operations in a location convenient to both your suppliers and customers. Your suppliers might be the food packagers or food processors, and being close to them will lower the cost of transporting their goods to your store while also ensuring that the quality of the food does not decrease due to time or transportation type. Your customers would be the people who own the stores that buy the most from you, and it makes good business sense to put your business in a location convenient to them. When making decisions such as location, however, you must compare the extra costs of having a convenient location to the lower costs of making your transportation more efficient. You must also find a balance between a location convenient for your suppliers and a location convenient for your customers. These decisions must consider all aspects of your business. For example, even if the convenient location has a higher combined cost, the cost may be worthwhile if the shorter delivery time and freshness of your deliveries leads to more business. Similarly, the transportation from your business to your customers is important if they do not carry things away. If you deliver goods to your customers, for example, it is a good idea to plan deliveries to the same area together to save costs related to fuel for your delivery truck or car. As with our earlier example, this should be compared to additional business you can win by promising fast delivery. In short, any process between raw materials and the final customer can be made more efficient by managing the supply chain. There are factors that can make it difficult for a supply chain to operate efficiently. There is at least one, and at most a few, in any given system. Constraints can be internal or external to the system. An internal constraint is something that prevents the supply chain from meeting the demand for a product or service. In the case of an internal constraint, the best solution is to find a way to produce or deliver more. Types of internal constraints include equipment. For example, if a company making clothing does not have enough sewing machines, or if the equipment is old and outdated, or if a delivery business does not have enough trucks to move farmers' crops to the market on time. People. For example, if the employees of a company manufacturing clothing do not know how to operate the sewing machines, or the delivery company does not have enough people available to drive its trucks. Policy. For example, laws or local customs that prevent the system from making more, such as a tradition of not working on Sunday. By using supply chain management, you can identify these internal constraints and develop ways to eliminate them. In the examples just given, if you identify that the outdated sewing machines are limiting the supply you can provide to your market, you should study the cost of upgrading or replacing the equipment. If that cost is lower than the extra profits you can expect, and your cash forecasts show that you can make the investment, it would be worthwhile to do so. Alternatively, if you determine that the skills of your workers are the issue, training on how to use the equipment would be an inexpensive way to eliminate the constraint. An external constraint exists when the system can produce more than the market wants. In the case of an external constraint, the organizations should focus on creating more demand for the products or services. In other lessons, we speak about ways to increase demand through marketing and other methods. These methods are approaches to address external constraints on the supply chain. In all of these cases related to supply chain management, the forecasting of results for the decisions you make is important. In another lesson, we discuss things to consider in compiling financial forecasts, and this process will probably require that several versions be completed with different assumptions. As these decisions can have actual financial costs, it is always a good idea to make sure your forecast assumptions are realistic. In many ways, forecasting and supply chain management are closely related, since both must make informed decisions about future supply and demand in your target market. For example, if you own a cafe, your sales forecast will help you decide how much fresh food to have in the kitchen on a daily or weekly basis. If the forecasts are too optimistic, you may have too much uncooked food, which will cost you money when it spoils. If you have too little, you may not be able to fill customer demand, which could lead to less sales in the future because of your customers' dissatisfaction with your service. Thus, proper forecasting and planning will help you better manage your supply chain and avoid unnecessary costs. The concept of a supply chain is related to a similar concept known as a value chain. The value chain concept studies how a product grows in value as it moves through a system. While these are similar concepts, the supply chain usually views the process of an industry, while the value chain is concerned more with an individual business. In summary, by understanding all of the components of a product you sell or a service you provide, you can identify ways to make the process more efficient and reduce costs. By managing your supply chain, you can reduce the amount of your working capital used for excess inventory while also improving customer satisfaction.